Hi, everyone. Welcome to my first live Facebook event. I'm the practice director at the Institute for Therapy of the Arts. I'm Dr. Marni Rosen. Welcome. I'm so glad that you're joining us this evening for the life-altering impact of art therapy. This event is about promoting ITA's art therapy experiences, creative arts therapies, and understanding what it is that we do as part of our goal to make art therapy understood to the community, to the people that we serve. And I would like to offer I'd like all of you to join me today to make some art, because I think one of the best ways to understand art therapy is to make art and to walk through it with me as we're going through it. So this evening I'm introducing what's called the altered book intervention. So we use that with lots of different populations and with different ages. And it starts with using some of the supplies that I gave you. So I hope that you all have those in front of you. And as I'm going through with you and going through the materials, I want you to know also that my colleague Jessica is here this evening. So if you have any questions, feel free to interact with us through Facebook Live, and she will let me know what your questions might be, and I can answer them at the end of the program as well. So let's go through some of the supplies that we have. So I had you pick out hopefully some either newspapers or mail or a magazine. And part of the reason why I gave these kinds of supplies is one of my philosophies in art therapy is that it should feel accessible at any point in time. So art isn't about supplies that you can just find in an art studio. So even though I'm in a gorgeous art studio at ITA, it's about being able to pick up the same techniques that we use in our therapy studio at home in the world without having to plan or be prepared for it, and that you can do it at any time. So let's go through what I have for you, because I want to talk through why these supplies. So if you have in front of you, I don't know if you have a newspaper. So newspaper is something for this kind of project that you can write directly on it, right? It does easily accessible for pens, for marker, for colored pencils, etc. Things you might have at home. The same thing with mail. You get this all the time. Most people just kind of throw it away, but you can use it to make art on it. And the same thing with magazines. So a lot of people associate magazines also with collage. But in this intervention, I want to talk through how one can incorporate it a little bit differently. So let me show you some examples of what this looks like. So when you look at it, when you plan an art experience, you can think of it two different ways. You can go in with I want to focus on this theme. This is something that I feel or have been thinking about, and I'm going to make art about this. Or you can just start with what pops up for you, whatever's on whatever word, whatever association, and then continue to make art kind of, in essence, kind of like doodling, but in a broader way to just continue to associate through the art making experience. So the altered book intervention is often actually taking a book. For tonight's experience, we're going to do one page from a piece of mail or in a magazine, but you would take something like a children's book or a dictionary or things like that, and you would actually alter the pages in the book. So here's some examples. This is my own altered book that I have worked on. So sometimes it's you draw in the piece that is already there. Sometimes you add paper on top of it. Sometimes you can even create 3D pop-up experiences from them. And you can alter the images through adding paper and markers and drawing on top of it. Other examples might be taking a piece of paper out of a book, which we could do this evening, and you place it on another piece of paper, kind of like this one. This is a piece of a dictionary, which gave me a word for association. Then that allowed me to kind of draw around it. This can also be done, for example, on canvas. So you could take it further and allow that it could be something you put onto a canvas with other collage materials and then paint around it as well. So there are lots of different ways to do this. So let's talk a little bit about what we're going to do tonight. So I want you to look at the materials that you have, and lots of things have different textures. So newspaper, for example, feels very different than a smooth piece of mail, right? Which feels very different than a magazine. So something to think about is if you have pencils or markers, they're going to show up differently on different types of materials, and that you can work with them in different ways. So if you happen to have kind of like a magazine or a more kind of slippery piece of paper, the marker, you could actually do slightly different things with it. So if you would like, before we get started, to try out some of the materials on the surfaces. So if you take your marker and you apply it just simply to the corner of any of the pieces that you have. So for example, there's on newspaper, that is on kind of a piece of mail, and you can see that if you go like this, it will smudge. So it has a different effect versus using it on a magazine. Okay, so this might change the way you think about supplies. It might also change how you want to approach the piece of art. But regardless, I want you to look at the piece and either choose by theme of what's in front of you. So for example, it happens to be that it's hard to pick up a newspaper that doesn't have something related to what's currently going on in the world. So you can reflect about that experience. You can just find something that says, I have one over here about moving. Maybe you have a memory or an experience about moving, and this picture, you're drawn to it in some way. So then you can incorporate this into your art. So pick out which page you'd like to start with. And when you look at that page, I want you to look at the words and the pictures and notice the things that pop out to you. It might be a person, it might be a color, it might be a word. And sometimes I start with simply putting a square or a shape around that word. Sometimes I start with just highlighting it so that it gives me a place to anchor what we're working on this evening. So if I take this one about moving, right? And so moving is what's calling my attention. So I might put a square around it, maybe a circle, and take a few minutes to figure out where you would like to start. As I go through this, I'm going to help prompt you to make some art, and then I'm going to answer some questions related to art therapy. So once I have this word kind of squared, circled, I want you, whatever it is, the word that you chose, the picture that you chose, I want you to think about what colors do you have associated with it. It might be just picking something that feels random at the moment. It might be like, I feel compelled to pick red, and that's completely fine. It might be something about that word that triggers a particular meaning. Pick that color, okay? Then I want you to think about what shapes are involved in that association, right? So maybe with moving, it's boxes, it's lots of squares. Maybe it's something having to do with packing. It has something to do with going someplace. So then I want you to create what looks like shapes or potentially representation. Like if you want to make moving boxes, great. But I want you to think about what it is that you are drawn to from there. So take a few moments to kind of create something associated with it. And even if you don't have something right off the top of your mind, allow your mind just to continue to make an idea happen. It might be lines that you don't know where it's going yet. It might be other words that you have that you associate with it. So try any of those things as you kind of just let your mind wander about that particular word, okay? Or picture. So it might be a picture that you have been drawn to. So then you could create a frame around that picture. You could edit the picture. Maybe the people in the picture don't have the expression that feels right to you. So you look at all these different components and you edit what you're seeing in front of you. So this is color, shape, words, and just let your mind kind of go through that process. So while you're kind of doing that, I'm going to talk a little bit about some common questions that people ask me about art therapy. I think one of the most common things I get asked, what's the difference between doing art therapy and going to an art class or doing art at home? And while I believe, and any art therapist would tell you, that recreational art is therapeutic by definition, because engaging in the art materials is healing. We believe that. So it's not that an art class won't be helpful. We absolutely believe it can be helpful. It's what the intention and the goal of what you're trying to do. So the way to explain that is that in an art class, you're going to a class to generally to improve skills or to enjoy making a piece of art. But the ultimate goal is that it looks nice. Like, you go to an art class to learn how to make things look a particular way. That's what the teacher's there to help you do. That's what they're training you to do. For art therapy, our goal isn't the same. It's not really about how the product looks, what the finished piece is. It's about what is that you're doing in the moment that is helpful for you, either expressing something that's of interest to you, something that is you're struggling with, whether it be helping you understand how to use art materials for whatever mental health goal you might have, whether it be for anxiety management or increasing your interest in activities that you may not have been interested in a long time. Um, so there's a different way that we approach the art to begin with. It has a different purpose. And from that, and from looking at it that way, we set an individual therapeutic goal. So if a person comes to us with anxiety, that therapy is going to look actually quite different than someone who's coming who identifies on the autism spectrum. But we would work with, what are the goals that that person has? Maybe it's social anxiety, maybe it's social skills, maybe it's calming, maybe it's a traumatic experience that they're processing. And so art materials, art interventions, kind of like the altered book, would all be structured specifically for that person and what their therapeutic needs are. So instead of going to a class where it's everyone makes the same thing or variations of it, it's really structured to be the specific to the person who's coming to see us or to the group that is coming to see us. So another common question that I get is, how do people benefit from this? So I'm going to address particularly altered books because we're talking about it tonight. So why is this something I would do with a client? And oftentimes when people find themselves seeking out a therapist for mental health reasons, it often comes from a set of patterns, behaviors, things that they're struggling, changing in their lives, something that's happened that has altered their patterns of life, their thought processes, their feelings. And the intervention of altered books, just from the sheer process of looking at how to change something, is a metaphor, and a very strong metaphor of how do you change and become more flexible in the way that you're thinking. So where you might approach something the same way all the time, part of therapy is helping to alter the way that we think about something, the way that we do something. And we do that practically by learning how to alter something in art, by looking at it differently, by creating different associations, by making different marks than we would have before. This particular intervention also helps with people who want to convey a particular theme or a story or an experience where they want to alter potentially the ending or what happened, or confront someone or something that maybe they feel challenged in. So the story, where it may have been talking about, you know, ducks and little children's story, they can alter it to be a larger metaphor for whatever it is that they are working on and working towards. So they put themselves into the stories, however that story might be, and then they can create a response to their own personal experience. Another common thing is helping people, as I was talking about, kind of free associate in art, allowing your mind to flow in the process of creativity. We often struggle in life when we get stuck and we feel like we can't think creatively. We can't think outside the box. We can't tackle problems in ways differently than we have before. And so sometimes that comes from our minds not being able to allow other thoughts and other ways of thinking in. And so going into the process of just allowing flow, association, feeling like you're moving from one thing to the next, not planning every detail all the time, allowing your mind to think of possible solutions as they come can build the confidence for someone who struggles with problem solving. I can look at this problem, I can look at this piece, and now all of a sudden I can see a different way that I may have can approach it now than I couldn't have before. Other ways, other things are the ability to create metaphor. So this happens a lot also with collage, but for example, the pieces I was showing you, these art pieces, a lot of them I made have to do with the words around therapy, and it's a greater metaphor for something that was personal to me. So if people can use this process to express more than words, because often we find that particular words or experiences are not enough. It's just not enough to say things anymore. Like sometimes we need to show it. Sometimes we need to put it out there in ways that are a little bit different, that capture more than just a single word. It might be color, it might be shape, it might be a bigger image of all of the components together than just one word. So that is one of the ways that we can capture it through even an altered book experience is they can look at a piece, a simple piece of newspaper and say, this is a greater message and a metaphor that I can draw out of a single word in the newspaper. So another thing that I commonly also get asked is, what do we do once we're done with art? Like so you're just making art, you're just doing art with someone next to them, like what happens? Like what does a session look like, basically? So we would often start with something like, here's an idea. Would you be interested in going through this process with me? So we would do something similar to this. We would talk through what it looks like, what are they interested in making, and then they would go ahead and make art during session. And then once this art piece is completed, maybe you have something in front of you right now, we would look at it and yet we would talk about what the experience was like. Was there anything gained in it? How did it feel? Was it strange and awkward? Did it feel good? Did it feel like you had a release when you were making the piece of art? Did you gain some kind of insight that maybe I didn't know about before? What there isn't, and what people don't realize, is there isn't a interpretation that's given by the therapist. I don't know, I can't look at your piece of art and say, oh wow, that's really, let's talk about what's in that picture. That's not how this works. So it's a really big misconception about art. It's not that I can look at a picture of a child and all of a sudden know what's going on in their head. It's about through conversation about that art experience, through what's the content they may have in there, and asking them about it, because I may not know why they put it in there or why they drew it that way. So it's all in dialogue and in discussion that then really helps them explain more fully what their experience is. So an example that happened to me even this week is a client put a picture of a zucchini in her collage, and I was like, what does this mean? And the zucchini was cut in half, and she said to me she feels like she's half a person right now. And I couldn't have known that. Like I couldn't have known that that's what that was going to be by just looking at the picture, but it gave her a visual representation of how she was feeling. So that's where this is really valuable, that it's not, sometimes people can't say things that are that hard without something that can prompt them to do so, that they feel comfortable to put something out there in image first. We also believe, and I think it's one of the interesting things about art therapy, is that even if you look down at your piece right now and you're like, this doesn't mean anything, or I don't know what I did here, like this is just something I drew. We do believe that a part of ourselves are in every piece of art that we make. And what do I mean by that? It doesn't mean that there's some major interpretation and an unconscious belief in every single piece of art, but there was something about what was going on with you in the moment while you were making it, maybe something earlier from your day, maybe not, that promoted you to create this piece of art. So sometimes the discussion is simply, I felt so overwhelmed by what was happening, I really didn't know what to do, and then we can talk about that. So a piece of oneself is always in there, And there's content always that's elicited that comes from the experience, even if the person doesn't feel fully comfortable. It's one of the reasons why when I explain, you don't need to be good at art. I mean, you can use mail to make art, and I can help understand better what's going on with you and open up a discussion. This isn't about stick figures versus a beautiful masterpiece. It's really about you coming to an art therapy experience, wanting to try to see what may be a way to express what's going on in your life, in your day-to-day experiences, something from the past, something that's you're struggling with, and it gives us an opportunity beyond just talking, which is what makes us different than a talk therapist, than a counselor. It allows us to have something else in the space to ask questions about, to participate in, to engage in. So it's twofold. It's the art itself is therapeutic, like going to a class. Making art can be therapeutic, as well as the ability for us to talk about something that's in the space that helps convey thoughts, ideas, experiences. So if you want to take a few moments, you're welcome to kind of journal about the experience as well while we're through it. Sometimes we ask people to look at their art and then kind of respond to their art through writing. So it's also another way that sometimes we do it. But I know that we are getting close to the end, and I'm wondering if there are any questions that people have for me. So if someone is interested in art therapy, but they are expressing that they're not sure if it's right for them, or if they are interested and know it's right for them, what's the best way to get a hold of us? So the best way to do that is really to actually go to our website. I would look at our materials, but you can reach out to us from our main phone number or our intake line and ask to speak with one of us, so we can talk through what this looks like and if it's the right fit, and if you are far away, because I know this is a public national event on Facebook Live, we can help try to find therapists in your local area as well. So would this project work with someone younger? So obviously the metaphor and the insight is going to be different depending on the age. So yeah, younger children, usually art therapy tends to start with clients more in the ages 4 and up, as they start to kind of be more expressive with their art. But there's definitely a way to make them and have access to it. They read storybooks starting very early. So it might just mean that the content looks different and it is more in a metaphor form for them, but you talk about it through the story. So if you pick a child's book and they're editing a child's book, they can relate to that experience. And through that, they might tell a story about, it might still be an animal, it might be a person that isn't them, but you learn things about the way that they think and the way that they're approaching situations through the story itself. Is there anything else, Jessica? Wonderful. Feel free to please reach out to me through my email, through the Facebook event. I do want to let you know about our upcoming event this week. So on Thursday at 7:30 is our Healing Arts Celebration event. This is an event where we get to talk about the successes with our clients. Our executive director will be speaking, as well as Karen Jordan from ABC will be emceeing the event. So we would love for all of you to follow up with us. It is a free event. You do have to pre-register, so please go to our website, www.itachicago.org/HAC, Healing Arts Celebration, to help you remember it, and register, and you will receive a link to be able to attend the event. We also have a live auction going on right now with some incredible gift baskets. Please follow that link from our website as well. They are also on our Facebook page. You can go from there as well to look at what we have for our silent auction. As well as, I really want to thank our sponsors. It's very important that we were able to provide this to our community for free, all of our events this week, and that's really because of our generous sponsors. So our Presenting an artist sponsor, Wintrust Bank, community banks. Advocate sponsors are AFLAC, Scaletta Insurance, My State of Mind, Northwestern University, Transitions Home Medical Group, and S.I.R Management's Healthcare Consultants. Our friend level sponsors are CBC Beverage, Evolve Giving Group, InTouch and Emotion, Northwest Mutual Foundation, and Stanley Dayan of Northwest Mutual Chicago. I also encourage all of you to think about that making a donation yourselves. If this is something you feel compelled to do, please go to our website. Being able to help people who are less fortunate economically, who need support to be able to access our services. That's what this is all about. So my clients who do not have insurance, who cannot afford our services, this is the money that we raise to be able to pay for their therapies. So please consider making a donation. You can do that on our website. You can send us a check, whatever works best for you. So that again is itachicago.org. Thank you. Have a good evening, everybody.